Namaste friends, welcome you all for the biology session. In today's class, let us discuss about the chapter reproduction in organisms, so which comes under second PU biology. As we all know that, so reproduction is a biological process. If you want to define this term reproduction, we can say that it is the biological process. It is the biological process in which an organism gives rise to young ones. So that is what in simple term we can say young ones. And these young ones, right, similar to itself, similar to the parents. Young ones similar to parents. So we can't say that they're always the identical. We can also say that there will be a resemblance. Exact copy in the so individuals may be sometime identical with each other and identical to their parents, and at the same time they are not identical. How we can say that they are not identical? Because of two types of reproduction, that is asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. As we all know that asexual reproduction, and there are two types of sexual reproduction, in which that is asexual reproduction where single parent, right? So individual which is going to produce young one, right, only that is it involves a single parent. And this is individual produced by, it includes single parent, right? It includes the two parents, both the male and female individuals. And here there is no the process of, it won't involve the process of no gametogenesis. And if no gametogenesis, there is no fertilization. Gametogenesis illa andre fertilization kuda illa, right? Whereas here it involves both, as it involves both parents, that is we can say that the single parent, and this is here it is a single parent and it is biparent, right? It is biparental. So now it involves both gametogenesis, formation of gametes is called as gametogenesis, and fertilization, that is what fusion of those two gametes to produce zygote. So whenever that fusion occurs, generally we can say that each and every individual, right, here you can say that the further that zygote develops into, right, zygote develops into an individual through the process, right, that is developmental stages. So as here no gametogenesis, no fertilization, here it won't involve any sex organs, and here it involves sex organs. No sex organs, and here it involves, right, with sex organs. It includes sex organs. And whenever we're going to consider that, here this type of the reproduction, asexual reproduction seen in the organisms which are lower level. So level of organization will be in the lower level, or you can say that they are not very well developed. So organisms, right, develops from asexual reproduction will be there in organisms, right? Like develops from unicellular, where level of organization is not very well developed, right? And it includes only what is it, the unicellular organisms, and we can say that sometime generally primitive organisms which are with lower level of organization, lower level of organization. And here the level of organization is very well developed. So organisms which shows what is it, the sexual reproduction, in those organisms what is it, the actually these are, in simple term we can say that these are single cell expressed by what is it, the single cell unicellular organisms or primitive organisms, and along with that which are with simple or lower level of organization. Here we can also say that simple or lower level of organization, whereas here always higher level of organization. Simple animals, and this side higher animals. Primitive animals, in case of asexual reproduction, this will be seen in higher animals, right? And compared to that, higher animals with simple level of organization, but here complex level of organization. So this is what the difference. And whenever we're going to say that it is a simple and fast process, so asexual reproduction is very simple and fast process, whereas this is a complex and slow process. And whenever these organisms which will be produced, so these cells in these the organisms which won't involve, does it always point to be noted, only mitosis. Here we can see no meiosis, but whereas here it includes meiosis. So because of these processes, this generally only mitosis is what is it, the because of this process, mitotic division, right, the cell cycle completes at a faster rate, and that will going to give rise to new individual. So because of this it is fast, and here mitosis it takes time, and where an organism will going to show variations. So that is why organisms which show sexual reproduction, there will be variation. So the fundamental or vital process for variation is sexual reproduction. So here we can say that single parent, uniparental, right, and here biparental. So and no scope for variation, no scope for variations, right? So individuals which are produced, they are called as clones, exactly identical. If you consider this is an organism, and it will going to produce new individuals which are also exactly same, and these two are identical to each other, and also they are identical to their parents. So such individuals are called as clones. No, what is that, generally no dissimilarities, right? Or I can say that the complete similarity will be there. And here the individuals which are going to produce, they are called as variants, right? They are not identical among themselves, not identical and identical to each other. They are not identical to each other, and also with their parents. They are not identical with their parents. So these are the so if there is a variation here, no variation, no scope for evolution, So whereas in this case there is what is that, the scope for evolution. So because of variations, there will be scope for evolution. So these are the things, difference between asexual and sexual reproduction. So when you come to this asexual reproduction, where offsprings are exact copies, we can say. Let us take the first in detail the asexual reproduction, and we can solve some questions related to this asexual reproduction, right? There are different forms of asexual reproduction. So where you can say exact copies or the clones of each other, and what is it, the parent. So offsprings are exact copies, or we can say that clones. Here it will going to produce what is it, the clones, and they are exact copies of their parents, and they are what is it here. Single cell division is an essential mode of asexual reproduction. So always here you can say that such type of organisms will going to show that is single cell division will be there in case of asexual reproduction. So let us take what are the different types of asexual reproduction. So in simple what is it, the language mnemonic itara ನೆನಪಿಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ FBSFRV. So that is FBSFRV. Whenever we want to say that FBSFRV, the first thing is that the fission. So what is the meaning of fission? Fission, where you can say that the parental body, right, so it will going to divide. So here we can say that parental body divides. It maybe divides into what is it, the equal alls, or sometimes what is it, the unequal alls. So based on that, see, fission most commonly seen in bacteria, right? We can say that example in bacteria we can see that, and flatworms like planaria, and along with that protozoans. So most common in what is it, these bacteria, right, and also in protozoans. So what are the different types of what is it, the fission? So when you consider this, generally we'll say regular and irregular, but here we'll take what is it, the binary fission, right? How many what is it, the individual will going to produce. So binary fission, right, here where an organism, a parental body divides into two. Parental body divides into two what is that, individuals, divides into two individuals. So here we can consider if it is what is that, with a regular pattern, we can say sometime in amoeba it is irregular. So binary fission may be irregular, right, or you can say that regular with a particular pattern will be there. So in that regular pattern we can say that one is longitudinal, other one is transverse. So what exactly meaning of this, let us take within a while. So parental body divides into two, that is irregular. Example we can say amoeba, no particular pattern. From what is it, sometime it will going to divide transversely, sometime vertically, or you can say that horizontally or vertically. This is a transverse and this is vertically. So here it is not like that. Longitudinal means if you consider that an organism, right, euglena, longitudinal example you have to keep it in mind, euglena, and transverse you have to keep it in mind that paramecium. So these are the best example for longitudinal and transverse regular what is that, binary fission. So this the best example. And one more, in higher what is that, the organisms we can also consider, not higher organisms, in lower organisms only, paramecium and tapeworm, which will going to show what is it, transverse fission. So this, if you consider this is a euglena, right, so where in which this divides, right, longitudinally. And same like that, if you consider that as a paramecium, right, so in this you have to keep it in mind that this will going to divide what is it, transversely, like this. So one is longitudinal, euglena. So how we can remember this on the L and euglena. Transverse, generally the paramecium, DIUM, some people will going to write, and tapeworm. So that is what you have to keep it in mind. So next form is, so the second form, and here you have to keep it in mind that one is a binary fission, right, in fission, binary fission, and second one is multiple fission. So in this multiple fission, an organism where it divides into many individuals, So what is that? Generally example for this is plasmodium. So multiple fission, plasmodium, right? So next, the second type, budding, FBSFRV. Just you keep in mind that ಯಾವ್ದಾದ್ರು ನಿಮೋನಿಕ್ ಇಟ್ಕೋಬೋದಲ್ಲಿ, right? So FB. So let us take B, that is budding. So what is that budding? Outgrowth. As we all know that budding means outgrowth, right? Where an organism, what is it, the parental body will going to show outgrowth of parental body, outgrowth of parental body. ಇಲ್ಲೇನು ಎರಡು ಥರ ಬಡ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಇದೆ. ಒಂದು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟರ್ನಲ್ ಬಡ್ಡಿಂಗ್, ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟರ್ನಲ್ ಸರ್ಫೇಸ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಬಡ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಇಂಟರ್ನಲ್ ಬಡ್ಡಿಂಗ್. So always we're going to get these questions. So external budding, in case of external budding, we can say that hydra and cypha, right? So that is sponge, hydra and cypha, that is a sponge. And here internal spongilla, right? So spongilla, we can say that freshwater sponge, spongilla, freshwater sponge. And cypha, that is cycon, common name, that is cycon, spongilla, freshwater sponge. And here the internal budding, that is what you can say that generally in this we can mention here gemmules. Internal budding, that is gemmules, right? And next, let us take, what is it, the FBSRV. The S means sporulation. So in this sporulation, you can say that the tiny single-celled spores, tiny single-celled spores. So tiny single-celled spores which will be there, that is, in some these single cells are called as conidia, that is in fungi, mainly that is in penicillium, And if you consider that these conidia are immotile, that is non-motile and exogenous, they produce externally, right? That is, these are exogenous, right? And then they are immotile. So this is very, very important. Conidia, exogenous, immotile. And what is it, the motile flagellated, what is it, the endogenous structures are called as zoospores. That is, these are motile, endogenous, they produce inside the parental body, endogenous. And example, in some fungi we can see that, and blue-green algae, it is chlamydomonas, right? So blue-green algae and protist. So these are the example for zoospores. So zoospores are motile, conidia are immotile or non-motile. So next, fragmentation. So D, let us take that fragmentation. What exactly it includes? As we all know that the fragmentation means breaking down into many, what is it, the pieces, right? So breaking of parental body into two parts or more than that. So breaking of parental body into two parts. So example, here we can say that Spirogyra. So generally the common name they're going to ask, that is water silk. Common name, water silk, right? It is a green alga, right? Spirogyra, which is filamentous, right? Green alga, right? And then the chloroplast, the characteristic feature of that is spiral chloroplast. And next, here you can say one more, that is regeneration. SBFRV. Just you have to keep it in mind, all those things. SBF, right? That is SBFRV. So what exactly it includes? FB is RV. R means regeneration. So in regeneration, the last part which is going to, that is what? Repair of missing part. Repair of missing part, right, from the parental body. Example, here you can say that sponge and highest power of regeneration which will be there in planaria, flat forms, right? So sponge and planaria, which shows what is that? Regeneration. And last one, vegetative propagation. So here we can say that vegetative propagation, which is vegetative propagation, so which is of two types. One is natural vegetative propagation, other one is artificial vegetative propagation. So in this, the natural will say generally that is by roots, right? By roots and stems, right? Naturally they're going to grow, and leaves, bulbils, as we all know that the bulbils of agave, underground stem, right? So all these which includes bulbils, and then underground stems different, and it also includes what is that? Develops from underground stem, right? So there is a stem modification, and that is which includes the, so yeah, artificial, what is it, which includes generally, as we all know that, right? So cutting, layering and gooting, we can say cutting, layering are the best example. Cutting, layering, so cutting will be there, the stem cutting, root cutting and leaf cutting. And one more, that is micro propagation, as we all know that the process in the biotechnology, right? So micro propagation, large number of small plantlets obtained. And grafting, right? That is what, which includes scion and stalk, scion and stalk, right? So this are the things you have to keep it in mind. So just I will mention, in the vegetative propagation it includes vegetative propagules, right? So these are all, what is it, the very important vegetative propagules can be, what is it, the seen, the best example, bulbils of agave, bulbils of agave, what is it, the, just let us mention that in case what are those exactly, the vegetative, the propagules, these are the units, right? It is a mode of reproduction. Vegetative, what is it, the propagation is a mode of reproduction, right? It is produced, right, in which new plants are produced. Always keep it in mind, vegetative propagation seen only in plants. Make a note of it, only in plants. Vegetative propagation seen only in plants. So when new plants, the what is it, the production of new plants, or you can say reproduction of new plants, or form, new plants or form by vegetative parts of the plant. So vegetative parts, so these vegetative parts are called as vegetative propagules, vegetative propagules. So vegetative propagules, right? So these are the units of vegetative propagation, which are, what is it, the capable to giving rise to new offspring. Vegetative propagules which are capable to, what is it, gives rise new offspring, a part of the plant, the new plants we can say in simple way. So vegetative propagules are the unit of vegetative propagation which are capable of giving rise to new offspring, capable of giving rise to new offspring, new offsprings na kodtave. So what is the meaning of that? It includes, what is it, generally ಒಂದೇ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಇನ್ವಾಲ್ವ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸಿನ್ಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದಿ ಫಾರ್ಮೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ದೀಸ್ ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ಸ್ ವಿಚ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ದೇರ್, ರೈಟ್, ಇಟ್ ಇನ್ವಾಲ್ವ್ಸ್, ರೈಟ್, ಆರ್ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸೇ ದಟ್ formation of these structure, since formation of these structures does not involve two parents, does not involve the two parents, hence it is called as, it comes under asexual reproduction, hence we'll consider as asexual reproduction. So that is the one you have to keep in mind, right? So in plants, only in plants, in animals also we can say asexual reproduction, but only in plants, hence we'll consider as vegetative propagation with the help of propagules. So let us mention what are those in simple way, direct question. These are bulbils of agave, right, and then rhizomes of ginger, right, and many runners of oxalis, and also in case of grasses we can say that there is suckers of mint, right? So pudina anta helbodu, and offsets of icornia, right? So offsets of icornia, which is also called as common name hyacinth, right? So hyacinth, and this which can say that the one more which includes pistia, right? And bulbils I thought bulbs of what is that, onion, and you can say garlic, and one more eyes of potato. So these are the direct questions we may get in case of vegetative propagules. So just go through this. So generally this type of vegetative propagation higher in angiosperms, right? So very common, and what are the higher angio, very common in higher angiosperms, right? So let us take next part, in which you can say that the just we can mention, right? So what are those the examples, right, for this? So bulbils, we already discussed that the bulbils of agave, and same like that. So by leaves budding, right? So buds will be there and produced the leaf buds. So if you consider that the by leaves, right, so which produces, right, that is example you can say walking fern, that is adiantum. Walking fern is a common name. Adiantum, what is it, right? It is a pteridophyte. Keep it in mind, pteridophyte which reproduces by leaves, right? So again, one the new plant. Why it is called as walking fern? Here it is a leaf which touches the ground, and once again it will going to grow into new plant. So it will keep on moving to the next region to next region, right? So that is where whenever that the leaves, what is it, the arching, right? So they are arching into what is it, the into the soil, that they are going to form, right, the leaves of this fern is going to touch the soil, there it will going to produce new plant. So parent plant body, when it touches the ground, it will going to produce a new plantlet. So that is what, through the leaves, that is what leaf buds. So by leaves, that is leaf buds. And bryophyllum ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದಾಗ adventitious bryophyllum. So bryophyllum, right, so which is produced with the help of adventitious buds. So what is that adventitious buds? So which arise from, what is it, the leaf notches, that is arise from leaf notches. So this is what you can say, generally it will be there like this, and from this notch that new individual will going to arise. So with this we can take some examples. And what is the difference between, what is it, the by leaf bud? So that is by leaf bud, you have to keep it in mind, seen in walking fern and bryophyllum adventitious buds, that is arises from the notches of the leaves which are present on the margin of leaves, right? Notch means this region we can consider as notch, right? Ridge ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ಸಾಲಿನ. And bulbils difference ಏನಿದೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ, by leaves, that is bulbils, right? So bulbils which are fleshy buds, bulbils are fleshy buds, generally seen in case of, what is it, the agave, fleshy buds, that is agave oxalis and lilies. So bulbils, so fleshy buds, these are arises at, if you consider this is at the axials of leaves, right? From here these arises, right, or at the base of the stem, right? So that is bulbils arises fleshy buds at the axial Axil of a leaf. Axial of a leaf and stem, this region. So that is what difference between bulbils and what is it, leaf buds. So before going to take some questions, we will take what is it, the in vegetative propagation, these are the propagules, vegetative propagules naturally, and artificial, the cutting, right? So just let us mention here artificial vegetative propagation. So here we are going to induce this, or you can say that it includes first here you can say cutting. So in cutting, common question we are going to ask, that is a stem cutting. Stem cutting will be there in rose, bougainvillea, right? So rose and bougainvillea. So bougainvillea, right? So LVILLEA. So villia. And in some we can say that the root cutting, that is blackberry and raspberry. Blackberry and raspberry, right? So these are the examples for root. And second type, that is layering. So as we all know that layering is most common in lemons and grapes. It is lemons and grapes. And one more, that is there are different types, not required. And one more, that is gooting. In layering itself we can say that is gooting, right? So gooting, which will be there in lychee and pomegranate, right? Pomegranate. So next here the third one, micro propagation. So micro propagation, I already mentioned that it is the new technique under biotechnology, or you can say that the tissue culture, not biotechnology, sorry, that is new. A plant will be obtained with the help of what is it, the tissue culture technique. So obtaining large mass of new what is it, the smaller plantlets, right, using artificial medium, and which is aseptic medium. So this is here to keep it in mind, aseptic medium. And last one, grafting. I've already mentioned that it includes scion and stalk. And here you can say that the stalk, it is a root part. Stalk, which is a root part. Generally we won't consider it as completely with the varieties. When you're going to consider this stem, right, if this is the stalk and stem which will be fixed to that stalk, which will be more what is it, varieties. Most commonly what is it, the grafting will be done in mango, apple and citrus. Mango, apple and citrus, what is it, the fruits. So shoot, so this is stalk, and shoot part which is actually scion. So next let us move on to what is it, let us take some questions related to this before going to take sexual reproduction, right? So where here the generally will say that the lifespan will be there. We know that what is it, lifespan, that is a time period between the birth to natural death. It will be varies in elephant 60 to 90 years, and some butterfly 1 to 2 weeks, and fruit fly if you consider that is something around 1 to 2 months, right? Crow 15 years, right? So in case of lifespan, it is not dependent on what is it, larger body volume, or you can say that the smaller. So if you consider the parrot and crow, parrot is smaller, it lives around 140 years, whereas crow lives only 15 years. So that is why we can say that it is not dependent on the what is it, the volume of the body, or you can say that the size of the body. Lifespan is not dependent on the size of the body. It varies from organisms to organism. So and here we can say that the butterfly which is going to live 1 to 2 months. So with this we can take some what is the next part here. Sexual reproduction, in which in in reproductive, the organisms will going to reproduce, which includes the different the stages. Generally we can say that stages means juvenile phase, right? That is the different phases of the life cycle. Juvenile phase, other one is reproductive phase, juvenile phase, and then reproductive phase, and the third one senescent phase. So these will going to mark with a different the characteristic feature. Juvenile phase, generally which will be called it as vegetative phase in plants, right? So vegetative phase in plants, where growth will be there. Growth of an individual will going to takes place. So now we can take some characteristic feature of these phases, and along with that how organisms will going to change in these the phases. So sexual reproduction, if you consider that almost all the organisms, there will be a phases and events, and you have to keep it in mind that pre-fertilization, fertilization, and post-fertilization. So if they're going to ask phases of sexual reproduction, so we know that always organisms will going to show sexual reproduction, right? There will be elaborate process, right? And it is an elaborate process and complex. Already mentioned that it is a slow process. So here a very important thing we can keep it in mind that almost all the organisms, which includes plants, animals, and fungi, they shows great great difference in external morphology. So even though there is total variation in the external morphologies are not similar. Right? Eಲ್ಲಿಂದ comparison ಮಾಡಿ animals, plants, and fungi comparison. Plants and fungi, if you're going to compare these organisms, total variation in the external morphology. But in some the internal structure, right? In some aspects like internal structure, along with that physiology, right? Along with that physiology is little, but the processes like sexual mode of reproduction, but in sexual mode of reproduction, right, the processes are same. Sexual mode of reproduction, there is the similarity. So similar phases, or you can say that the similarity will be there. So organisms will going to show sexual mode of reproduction, right? Similar pattern will be there. So that is what, even though there is completely variation in the external morphology and the internal structure and physiology, but reproductively, or you can say that in the process of reproduction, they are going to show little similar pattern. We can't say little similar pattern, completely somehow similar pattern. That is what we can say juvenile phase. That is period of growth where it is birth to sexual maturity. So juvenile phase, in short form, we can say that birth to sexual maturity. It's a phase between birth to sexual maturity. So in this, the sexual maturity, where it is going to they attain, once it is going to attain the capability to reproduce, that is called as reproductive phase. It is a phase between birth to sexual maturity. So once it obtain, that is in the reproductive phase, it is ready to, right, capable to produce. Why? Because morphological and physiological changes attains. So here we can say that in with respect to the sexual events, that is morphological, and we can say that the physiological changes, morphological and physiological changes will be there. Morphological and physiological changes. So in that changes, which will be morphological and physiological changes to attain sexual maturity. To attain sexual maturity. So what happens in that case? once they attain sexual maturity means we can say that they are ready to reproduce. So sexual maturity, right, after they obtaining sexual maturity they are ready to reproduce. So means capable of producing gametes. In simple they are going to get the capability to produce gametes. And the last one, so here the in plants flowering marks, right, in the angiosperm flowering marks the reproductive phase, right. So that is what you can say, the structures are different, I can say that the events and processes are similar. Always we can say structures or what is it, the different, structurally different, but events and processes are similar. Processes are similar, even though they belongs to different, what is it, the group. And the last one, senescent phase, that is what the old age, or I can say that where the organism will going to reduce its metabolism. So as we all know that life cycle ಹೇಗಿರುತ್ತೆ, first birth ಆದಮೇಲೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಜನರಲಿ ಗ್ರೌತ್. ಸೊ ಆಫ್ಟರ್ ದಟ್ ಗ್ರೌತ್ ಅಟೈನ್ ಮೆಚುರಿಟಿ ಆದಮೇಲೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಈ ಗ್ರೌತ್ ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಮೆಟಬಾಲಿಸಮ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಮೋರ್, right, more, what is it, metabolism, that is what BMR, basal metabolic rate, will be very high. After attaining maturity they are going to reproduce. So after reproduction at certain age they are going to reduce, the BMR rate decrease in BMR. So that is what we can say, the slowing down of metabolism, that is slowing of metabolism. Once it's, what is it, the slow down, right, or slows down, that will going to, what is it, leads to aging. So where no further growth will be there, and this is the one you have to keep it in mind. And one CET question here, we can expect that juvenile phase, or you can say that these phases which will be there, right, so very clearly visible, so clear, right, differentiation, clear cut differentiation of this vegetative phase, reproductive phase and senescent phase can be done in plants. Clear vegetative, reproductive and what is it, the senescent phase in, what is it, the plants like annuals and biennial. So annuals and biennial which will going to produce, annual and biennial which will going to show clear cut variation in, what is it, vegetative, reproductive and senescent phase, whereas perennial it is very difficult. Keep it in mind, in perennial plants it is difficult to, what is it, they have a definite, difficult to define those phases. Expected question, right. So next, as we all know that there is an unusual flowering phenomena, that is what in the perennial plants, bamboo, right. So bamboo which is going to produce the young ones, that is 50 to 100 years once, and same like that only once, that is what we can say, only once in their lifetime. And neelakuranji, so neelakuranji, or you can say that Strobilanthus kuntiana, neelakuranji, or scientific name that is Strobilanthus kuntiana. So this is the one which will going to, what is it, the flowering will be there 12 years once. So that will going to complete its life cycle 12 years once, but you can say that it will going to show flowering. And in animals also that reproductive phase is variable. So based on that, generally we can say that in female, that is reproductive phase in animals, it is also various. That is where we can say that the female animals, you can say that the female animals which will going to show certain variations. So what are those generally? So that is what, where's the cycle, right, in primates and non-primates will say, that is female animals which show variable reproductive phases. Reproductive phases. So best example, so variable in reproductive, I can say variation in reproductive phase. So what is that? In some we're going to call it as, which will be there, that is a menstrual cycle will be there, and some it will be called as estrus cycle. Estrus cycle. So this is where we can say that this menstrual cycle will be there in the primates, that is like monkey and human beings. Primates, here we can expect that question, monkeys and including us, that is human being, that is mainly in females, not in males, humans and apes. So what is that? Whenever we're going to say that these are actually both are placental mammals. So female placental mammals only. Placental mammals. And in that mammals we know that we have a primates and non-primates. So estrus cycle will be there in non-primates. So let us take the example for this here, that is cow, sheep, dog. Cow, sheep and dog, which comes under this. So here the events will be there. So what is it exactly? It is a cyclical change, right? So each and every female placental mammal will going to exhibit that cyclical change. So cyclical changes, right, in the activities of first one, you have to keep it in mind that activities of ovaries, and along with that accessory ducts, ovaries, accessory ducts, and very important thing where all including hormones, it is as well as hormones. So variation in ovaries, accessory ducts and hormones, such cyclical changes during the reproductive phase, cyclical changes in the activities of ovaries, accessory ducts and hormones during reproductive phase of primates. Phase of primates is called as menstrual cycle. Reproductive phase of non-primates is called as estrus cycle. So this we can say this here. Generally two difference we can say here. In this, shedding of endometrium will be there. Shedding of endometrium, that is what the uterine layer, and here what is it, the shedding, or you can say that shedding of endometrium, along with that bleeding will be there. So bleeding occurs. So here no such activities, no shedding of endometrium not occurs, right? Do not occur. And next, one more we can say that air will be, which show what is the irresistible sexual urge, right? So in this case, irresistible sexual urge will be there. Sexual urge will be there, and here the sexual urge is resistible, right? So no sexual urge, right? And let us take what are the events which will be there. So here you can say that no heat period will be there, any specific, and here will be heat period. So heat period, and in mammals we won't consider it as heat periods. And next the different types of events. So events in sexual reproduction, we will discuss this in the next part. Let us take some questions. Events in sexual reproduction. So where we are going to study about this pre-fertilization, fertilization and post-fertilization. Events in sexual reproduction, that is phase is very important, and events. So events in sexual reproduction, what are those events? Here same like that, how the 3 phases of sexual reproduction will be there, same like that 3 events, right? So events which include pre-fertilization, fertilization, post-fertilization. Post-fertilization. So these are the events. Let us discuss in detail in the next part. Let us take some questions related to these discussion. That is synapses, what we have discussed. Most the common thing will say that in almost all organisms, that in all the methods of asexual reproduction, right, in all the methods of asexual reproduction, right, offsprings produced are genetically identical, right. So sometime we'll say that whenever organism will going to reproduce, right, through asexual reproduction, we mentioned that no variations, such organisms or individuals are called as clones. Offspring produced are genetically identical to their parent, and morphologically external similarity will be there, and also genetically identical to their parents. So we can consider that is correct. Offspring produced are genetically different, so that is in sexual reproduction. Wrong. And offspring produced may or may not be identical. No, it is always, they are always identical, right, always identical. So none of the above. So answer for that is A. In all methods of asexual reproduction, clones will be produced which are identical, genetically and morphologically. Common method of asexual reproduction is by, so most common, generally we will consider that the budding, and we can also say that the fission. I already mentioned that. So budding and fission commonly, the budding which will be seen in, as I mentioned, that some that is the hydra and yeast, and along with that the spongilla, right, internal and external, and bacteria, protozoans, most of the bacteria, protozoans, right, which includes some regeneration. We know that last part which is going to grow, and budding, so that is the external growth, and fission, parental body divides. Arcuocytes, and these are the cells which are present in generally cylinderates. Gemmulation, that is gemmules, right. So answer for that is most common, budding. In sexual reproduction, offsprings resemble the parents. So in sexual offsprings resemble the parents structurally but not functionally, right. So structurally it resembles, functionally also it resembles. Not, we can't say that functionally it won't resemble. It resembles, the generally structurally there will be a slight variations, but functionally same. If you consider a human being, you can't say that one's heart which is going to do some other function. It is always show pumping action only. So that is what functionally the offsprings resembles their parents functionally, but not structurally. Both structurally and functionally, no. That is in case of asexual reproduction, neither structurally nor functionally. So that can't be exist. So here in sexual reproduction, offsprings resembles the parent functionally but not structurally. That is what variations. Asexual reproduction takes place in, so asexual reproduction takes place always in lower animals, where the level of organization is simple level of organization, not it is not the complex. And next, as a result of binary fission, the number of individuals produced by one fission. So one fission means one division. So always if you consider that this is the amoeba, which is going to show irregular, the fission. We can take any shape. It is not like that we have to take exactly that particular shape. And one, it will going to divide either the longitude, the horizontally, or you can say longitudinally or transversely. And once it will going to divide, it gives two the individuals. One fission, two fission, 4, 8. So same like that. The alternation of asexual and sexual generation, where both generations are diploid and the haploid stage is represented only by gametes, is called. So what is that alternation of generation? We can say generally in case of cylinderates. So animal kingdom, here we can mention that cylinderates, alternation of generation means polyp and medusa. So polyp and medusa stage of the cylinderates, there will be alternation. right? So this is where the organism which will going to produce. So that is what we can say, that the alternation of generation, right? So polyp to medusa and medusa to polyp. So that is, we discussed that one question in the animal kingdom. So metagenesis is the process. So next, which mode of reproduction present in amoeba? So as we all know that amoeba, which shows what is it, the regular, and sometimes it also shows multiple fission. That is what I can say, we can consider that not always binary fission, it also shows multiple fission. So that is what you can say, that the unfavorable condition amoeba will be produced. So during unfavorable condition, right, so amoeba, the more number of amoeba will be produced. So it includes both binary fission and multiple fission. So binary fission is found in, so already we mentioned that amoeba, that is what protozoans, so protists generally, which includes that the protozoans, paramecium and planaria. So all these, in all these organisms we can see binary fission, amoeba, planaria and what is that, paramecium. Next, what is true in the process of fertilization? So only one sperm reaches the egg and enters it. Only one sperm, what is it, the reaches the egg and enters it. The entry of sperm activates the egg for completing meiosis. So we know that if egg include, right, so egg and sperm included, generally we'll say that is fertilization. That is the process which is called as fertilization, or we can also call it as syngamy. Fertilization, or what is it, syngamy, right, syngamy. So that is the entry of sperm activates, that is what you can say, secondary oocytes which will undergo further, sorry, primary oocyte which will undergo a further division, and that will going to become secondary oocyte. So B is the correct answer for this. So two haploid nuclei fuse and immediately divide to produce two nuclei which are again haploid, no, which are again, actually they will become diploid, right? Only the acrosome of the sperm enters the egg. No, acrosome won't enter, that will going to, what is it, the plasma, that will going to, what's the, lysis the plasma membrane, and that is head part which will going to enter, head part along with that acrosome. Acrosome attaches to the plasma membrane, right, plasma membrane of the, what is it, the ovum, and that will going to degrade this. Once it gets degrade, once it gets, what is it, the lysis, or you can say that the, because of the enzyme acrosin, so that is also, that only acrosome, that is wrong. So correct answer is the entry of sperm activates the egg. On fertilization, egg nucleus with sperm nucleus. So what happens generally, which will going to produce, so when fertilize egg nucleus with sperm nucleus will going to produce zygote, and zygote develops into embryo. First maturation is completed. Now second maturation is completed, we can say, where you can say that the on fertilization of egg nucleus, see, not the, when a sperm enters the ovum is different, right? So when nucleus which will going to, what is it, the fuse, so that is where we can say embryo development starts. So that is what you have to keep in mind. The function of egg cell is, or so always we know that egg cell, that is where we can say that the egg which will going to provide, that is the cytoplasm which will be there, they acts as a reserve food material in most of the, it provides most of the cytoplasm to the embryo for the development, supplied haploid set of chromosomes for the future embryo. And then it makes, but major function here we can consider as it provide most of the cytoplasm to the embryo. It supplies food reserves to the embryo, and then all of the above. So here it supplies haploid set, that is also correct, and here it provides most of the cytoplasm, that is also correct. It supplies food reserves, so we can't say that always it provides most of the cytoplasm. Along with that, haploid set also provided by the egg cell and also supplies food reserves. So all of these are the correct answer. Development of an egg without fertilization. So we know that generally parthenogenesis. So there we can take. So parthenogenesis is the development of female the gamete directly into young one, right? That is parthenogenesis. So parthenogenesis, what is it? It's a process where you can say that the development of egg, right? So where it includes development of egg directly, or you can say that the ovum into complete individual. So into complete individual, once it grows, that is called as parthenogenesis. That is what without fertilization. Into complete individual without fertilization. Without fertilization. So without fertilization means no sperm involvement. Without fertilization and no sperm will be involved here. That is known as parthenogenesis. We know that what is the meaning of metagenesis, gametogenesis and oogenesis. Gametogenesis, formation of gametes, takes place in both male and female. Oogenesis, formation of what is that, the ovum or egg, right? So that is takes place in what is that, the female, and this gametogenesis takes place in both male and female. So gametogenesis are of two types. One is oogenesis, other one is spermatogenesis. So spermatogenesis takes place in male. Next. So next question we can take answer for that is D. And cells become variable in morphology and function in different regions of the embryo. The process is, so whenever that the difference will be there, when we know that generally once a zygote develops into embryo, that embryo development is called as embryogenesis. So once that embryogenesis takes place, there will be cell differentiation, right, and cell division continues. So cell differentiation, which leads to cell differentiation leads to formation of different types of the tissues, and tissues to organ, and organs to organ system. That is where we're going to get an individual. So cell differentiation will be there, and cell division increases cell number. That is what we can say growth, structural and the volume which is going to increase. So answer for that is different regions of the embryo, that is because of differentiation, right? So organization, that is what you can say that will going to develop into different organs with the complexity increases here. Rearrangement, the cells which will going to during embryonic development, some structural changes will be there. Metamorphosis, where you can say the young one undergo several different stages to become adult. That is metamorphosis. And in an egg, the type of cleavage is determined by. So generally, this we won't study that in the theory. Let us take here. What is it? Cleavage. That is what we can say that the mitotic division. So here we'll say that is an unequal division where cell size varies, not equally divides. So it is mainly dependent on the amount and distribution of yolk. So this determined by amount and distribution of yolk. So these are the things which are very important. So next we'll take the eyes of potato. We discussed that eyes of the potato tuber or. So exactly we know that that is the stem, right? So we can say that shoot buds, right? So shoot buds. Consider the following statement, choose the correct option. So what is that? The genetic constituent of plant is unaffected in vegetative propagation. So genetic constituent of right, constitution of plant is unaffected in vegetative propagation. It won't change, no variation. Meiosis irrelevant. So that is correct. Rhizome of ginger serves as an organ of vegetative reproduction. Correct. That is vegetative propagation. Totipotency, that is what in case of the tissue culture, where you can say that micropropagation, that depends on totipotency. Cells enables us to micropropagate plants. So all the three statements are correct. So D is the answer. So with this we can stop. Let us continue the next question in the next part.